Jake Thompson had always lived a life in motion. As the son of a military officer, he moved frequently, never staying in one place long enough to call it home. This transient lifestyle made him resilient and adaptable, but he longed for stability. After serving in the military himself, where he honed his skills in Arabic and computer science, Jake decided it was time to plant roots and build something lasting. On a crisp autumn day, Jake was exploring the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, looking for the perfect location to open his computer and security equipment store. He found himself standing in front of a vacant store with a "For Rent" sign. As he peered through the dusty window, the door unexpectedly swung open, startling him. "Sorry to scare you," laughed a tall woman with sharp blue eyes and a firm handshake. "I am Carol Hughes, the leasing agent." Jake chuckled. "No problem. Just wasn't he expecting company?" Behind Carol stood a petite woman with an engaging smile and a businesslike demeanor. "I am Emily Davis, the banker. Are you interested in renting this space?" Jake nodded, introducing himself. "Yes, I am. Jake Thompson. I am looking to open a computer and security equipment store." Carol and Emily exchanged glances. Carol spoke first. "The rent is $1,200 a month plus electricity. Minimum lease term is 6 months." Jake considered the offer. "How about $1,000 a month for a year, paid up front?" Carol raised an eyebrow, impressed. "I think we can work with that." Emily handed Jake her card. "Why don't you come by the bank tomorrow and we can discuss the details? Maybe even grab lunch." Jake smiled, taking the card. "Sounds like a plan." The next day, Jake drove his Corvette to the bank, eager to finalize the lease and learn more about the intriguing banker. Emily greeted him warmly and led him to her office. "Let's get the paperwork out of the way first," Emily said, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Then we can talk about your business over lunch." Once the formalities were handled, they headed to a nearby Italian restaurant. Emily, impressed by Jake's Corvette, asked if she could drive. Despite her initial nervousness with the manual transmission, Jake patiently guided her, and they arrived at the restaurant laughing and chatting like old friends. Over lunch, Jake shared stories from his military days, including his time in the Middle East. Emily listened intently, fascinated by his experiences. "Why did you join the military?" Emily asked, her curiosity piqued. Jake leaned back, contemplating his answer. "My father was in the Army, and I guess I wanted to follow in his footsteps. Plus, I had a sense of patriotism and a desire to see the world. My skills in Arabic and computers got me assigned to some interesting roles." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "That must have been intense. Did you ever get injured?" Jake smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Maybe after our third date I'll show you my scars." Emily laughed, the sound melodious and genuine. "Third date? Do I get a say in this?" Jake grinned. "If you want to see them on the second date, I can set aside my modesty." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, each story drawing them closer. By the time they finished lunch, there was a palpable connection between them. As they drove back to the bank, Emily asked, "So what have you been up to the last couple of years that made you so jumpy when Carol opened the door?" Jake hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. "I spent the last 2 years in the Middle East as a translator for the Army. There, when an unfamiliar door opens, you better be ready for anything." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. "Well, I am glad you are back, and I am looking forward to seeing more of you." That evening, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that meeting Emily was a turning point in his life. He decided to call her, asking her out for dinner the following Saturday. "Hi, Emily, it's Jake. How about dinner on Saturday? 7 p. Emily's voice was warm and inviting. "I'd love that. I'll dress nicely and be dazzling." Saturday night arrived, and Jake was nervous but excited. Emily looked stunning in a little black dress, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. They dined at a high-end steakhouse, the atmosphere filled with the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses. "You look amazing, Emily. All the guys at the VFW will be jealous," Jake said, his eyes never leaving hers. Emily laughed, a playful glint in her eyes. "If you take me to the VFW, I'll never see your battle scars." I can show them to you on the second or third date, Jake teased. After dinner, they went to a jazz club, the music setting the perfect backdrop for their deepening connection. As they danced, Emily felt a sense of safety and excitement she hadn't experienced in years. When Jake drove her home, he hesitated at her door. Was this date good enough for another one? Emily smiled, leaning in for a kiss. Yes, and I still want to see those scars. Their relationship blossomed over the next few weeks. Emily moved out of her small apartment and into Jake's spacious condo. They spent weekends exploring the city, planning for their future, and growing closer with each passing day. Jake felt a profound sense of contentment. For the first time in his life, he had found a place to call home and someone to share it with. Little did he know, this newfound happiness was fragile, and the storm clouds of betrayal and revenge were already gathering on the horizon. Jake Thompson stood at the edge of a new chapter in his life. After months of dating, he and Emily Davis were finally married. The wedding was a small but elegant affair, held at a charming chapel in the heart of Denver, surrounded by close friends and family. Emily looked radiant in her lace wedding gown, her eyes sparkling with joy as she and Jake exchanged vows. The couple decided to buy a house in the suburbs of Denver, a beautiful 2-story home with a spacious yard and a view of the mountains. It was everything Jake had ever wanted, a place to call his own, where he could build a life with Emily. Jake's business, Thompson Tech Solutions, flourished. His skills in computer security and surveillance technology attracted a steady stream of clients. Meanwhile, Emily excelled at the bank, quickly rising through the ranks due to her sharp mind and charismatic personality. Together, they seemed like the perfect couple, successful, in love, and planning for a bright future. However, as Jake's business grew, so did the demands on his time. He often found himself working late into the night, ensuring his clients' security systems were impenetrable. Despite his efforts to balance work and home life, the gap between him and Emily slowly widened. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Jake came home to find Emily sitting alone in the living room, staring blankly at the television. He could sense the tension in the air. "Hey, Emily," he greeted, trying to sound cheerful. "How was your day?" Emily looked up, her expression weary. It was fine, just busy. Jake sat down next to her, reaching for her hand. "I know I've been working a lot lately, but I'm trying to build something for us, for our future." Emily sighed, pulling her hand away. "I know, Jake, but it feels like you're always working. We barely spend any time together anymore." Jake felt a pang of guilt. He knew she was right. "You are right. I am sorry. How about we take a weekend trip somewhere? Just the two of us. No work, no distractions." Emily's face softened slightly. "That sounds nice. Maybe we could go to the mountains like we used to." Jake smiled, relieved. "It is a date. I'll make all the arrangements." The weekend trip was a welcome escape from their daily routines. They hiked, explored quaint mountain towns, and spent cozy evenings by the fireplace in a secluded cabin. For a brief moment, it felt like their relationship was back on track. But as soon as they returned to Denver, reality set in. Jake was pulled back into the whirlwind of his business, and Emily's work at the bank grew more demanding. The distance between them resumed its steady growth. Emily's behavior began to change. She became more secretive, often staying late at the office or going out with friends Jake had never met. He tried to ignore the nagging feeling that something was wrong, convincing himself that it was just the stress of their busy lives. One evening, as Jake was working in his home office, he overheard a phone conversation between Emily and someone he didn't recognize. Her tone was playful, almost flirtatious, and it set off alarm bells in Jake's mind. "Who was that?" he asked casually when Emily entered the room. "Oh, just a friend from work," Emily replied, avoiding his gaze. "We are planning a big project, and there's a lot to discuss." Jake nodded, but his suspicions grew. He decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. He reached out to Tom Harrison, a private investigator he knew from his security business. Tom had a reputation for being thorough and discreet, just what Jake needed. "Tom, I need your help," Jake said during their meeting at a quiet cafe. "I think Emily might be seeing someone else. Can you look into it for me?" Tom nodded, his expression serious. Of course, Jake. I'll need to install some surveillance equipment and track her movements for a few weeks. It won't be cheap, but I'll get you the answers you need. Jake agreed, knowing the peace of mind was worth the cost. Tom went to work, setting up discrete cameras and tracking devices. Over the next few weeks, Jake anxiously awaited any news, his heart heavy with dread. One evening, Tom called. Jake, I've got something. Meet me at my office. Jake's hands trembled as he drove to Tom's office. He braced himself for the worst, unsure if he was ready to hear the truth. Tom greeted him with a grave expression. I am sorry, Jake. Emily has been seeing someone, Ryan Carter, a real estate developer. They've been meeting regularly, and it's more than just business. Jake felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over him. He had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was a different kind of pain. Tom continued, There is more. Emily and Ryan are planning to use your money to invest in a new project. They are banking on you being too distracted to notice. Jake's mind raced. He felt a burning desire for revenge, but he knew he needed to be smart about it. He couldn't let Emily and Ryan get away with this betrayal. Thank you, Tom. I need to think about my next steps, Jake said, his voice steely. That night, Jake lay awake, formulating a plan. He would not confront Emily directly, not yet. Instead, he would play along, pretending to be oblivious while setting the stage for a meticulous revenge. Jake knew he needed to secure his assets and protect himself from any legal fallout. He contacted his lawyer and financial advisor, arranging for his accounts to be moved and setting up a new identity. He became Tyler Connors, a man with no ties to his former life. Over the next few weeks, Jake continued to act as if everything was normal. He and Emily went through their daily routines, but beneath the surface, Jake was preparing for the ultimate betrayal. He quietly transferred his assets to secure locations, leaving just enough in their joint accounts to maintain the facade. He even pretended to be interested in Emily's new project, asking her to prepare a detailed proposal. Jake, I think this investment could be really good for us, Emily said one evening, her eyes bright with excitement. Ryan has some great ideas, and with your money, we could make a significant profit. Jake forced a smile. It sounds promising. I'd like to see the proposal and run it by some of my contacts overseas. If it checks out, I am in. Emily beamed, unaware of Jake's true intentions. Thank you, Jake. This means a lot to me. As Emily busied herself with the project, Jake finalized his plans. He arranged for a trip overseas, ostensibly for business, but in reality, it was the first step in his escape. The night before his departure, Jake and Emily shared a quiet dinner. He looked at her, wondering how things had gone so wrong. He still felt a pang of sadness, but it was overshadowed by the resolve to see his plan through. Take care of yourself while I'm gone, Jake said, his voice steady. I will, Emily replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. The next morning, Jake left for the airport. As he boarded the plane, he felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The first phase of his plan was complete, and now it was time to execute the rest. In the weeks that followed, Jake settled into his new identity as Tyler Connors. He monitored Emily's activities through the surveillance equipment Tom had installed, watching as she and Ryan continued their affair and plotted their financial schemes. But Jake was always one step ahead. He coordinated with Tom to gather evidence of their betrayal, ensuring that when the time came, he would have everything he needed to bring them down. As Jake prepared for the final act of his plan, he felt a sense of satisfaction. Emily and Ryan thought they had outsmarted him, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson, and so Jake waited, biding his time, knowing that the moment of reckoning was fast approaching. Jake Thompson settled into his role as Tyler Connors with remarkable ease. He was living in a quiet suburb in the outskirts of Denver, maintaining a low profile while keeping a vigilant eye on Emily and Ryan. Every day, he would check the surveillance feeds Tom Harrison had set up, analyzing every interaction, every secretive meeting, and every whispered conversation between the two. It wasn't long before Jake noticed a pattern in Emily's behavior. She would leave work early, citing various excuses, and meet Ryan at different locations around the city. Each encounter fueled Jake's resolve to see his plan through. One evening, as Jake reviewed the day's footage, he saw something that made his blood boil. Emily and Ryan were dining at an upscale restaurant, their conversation filled with laughter and intimate gestures. But it was what Emily said that caught Jake's attention. "We need to move forward with the investment soon," Emily said, her voice hushed but urgent. "Jake's been asking about the project, and I am worried he's getting suspicious." Ryan leaned in closer. "Dawn to worry, darling. We are almost there. Once we have his money, we'll be unstoppable." Jake clenched his fists, feeling a surge of anger. He knew he had to act quickly. The next step in his plan required precision and timing, and he couldn't afford any mistakes. The following day, Jake met with Tom Harrison at a secluded cafe. They sat in a quiet corner away from prying eyes and ears. "Tom, it's time to take this to the next level," Jake said, his voice low and determined. "I need you to gather more evidence, phone records, emails, anything that can prove their betrayal beyond a shadow of a doubt." Tom nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Consider it done, Jake. I'll make sure we have everything we need." With Tom's assurance, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. He returned home and began making the final preparations for his departure. He packed his belongings, ensuring that anything valuable or important was safely stored away. He also backed up all his computer data and moved personal and professional items to a secure storage unit. As the days passed, Jake played his role as the unsuspecting husband perfectly. He continued to engage with Emily, asking about her project and feigning interest in her plans. Emily, seemingly reassured by his apparent obliviousness, grew more confident and careless. One evening, while Emily was out with Ryan, Jake decided to do some investigating of his own. He searched through Emily's belongings, looking for anything that might give him more insight into her plans. In a small travel bag hidden in the back of her closet, he found a set of French lingerie, cheap clothes, and shoes that had been worn several times. Jake's heart sank. This was more than just an affair. Emily was leading a double life. He knew he had to act fast before things spiraled further out of control. The next day, Jake arranged to meet with Emily over dinner. He chose a cozy, romantic restaurant, hoping the setting would make her more open to talking. "Emily, I've been thinking about your project," Jake began as they sat down. "I want to help you make it a success. Can you show me the proposal you've been working on?" Emily's eyes lit up with excitement. "Of course, Jake. I have everything prepared. You'll see, it is a fantastic opportunity." As Emily went on about the project, Jake listened intently, nodding and asking questions. He wanted to appear genuinely interested, even though every word she said deepened his resolve to bring her down. "That sounds promising," Jake said, forcing a smile. "I'll take a closer look at the details and let you know my thoughts. In the meantime, I've arranged a trip overseas to meet with some of my contacts. They might be interested in investing as well." Emily's face brightened. "That's wonderful, Jake. Thank you for believing in this project." Jake nodded, hiding his true feelings. "Anything for you, Emily." As they finished their meal, Jake couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Despite everything, a part of him still loved Emily. But he knew that love wasn't enough to excuse her betrayal. The night before Jake's departure, he and Emily shared a quiet evening at home. They watched a movie, laughed, and reminisced about their early days together. It was almost as if things were back to normal, but Jake knew better. "Take care of yourself while I am gone," Jake said as they prepared for bed. "I will," Emily replied, her smile genuine for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Jake boarded a plane, leaving behind his old life and fully embracing his new identity as Tyler Connors. As the plane took off, he felt a mix of relief and determination. The pieces of his plan were falling into place, and soon Emily and Ryan would face the consequences of their actions. From his new location, Jake continued to monitor Emily and Ryan. Tom provided regular updates, including copies of incriminating emails and recordings of their conversations. With each piece of evidence, Jake's case against them grew stronger. Emily and Ryan, oblivious to Jake's true intentions, continued their affair and plotted their financial schemes. They believed they were on the verge of success, unaware that Jake was meticulously orchestrating their downfall. One afternoon, Tom called with an update. "Jake, I've got something you need to see. Meet me at the office." Jake arrived at Tom's office. His curiosity piqued. Tom handed him a folder filled with documents and photographs. "This is it," Tom said, his tone serious. "Everything you need to expose them." Jake flipped through the folder, his eyes widening as he read the damning evidence. Emails detailing their plans to siphon his money, recordings of their intimate conversations, and even photos of their clandestine meetings. "This is perfect, Tom." "Thank you," Jake said, feeling a surge of gratitude. Tom nodded. "What's your next move?" Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. It's time to set the final stage. "I need to make sure Emily and Ryan are together when everything goes down. They need to see the consequences of their actions firsthand." Tom raised an eyebrow. "How do you plan to do that?" Jake smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Leave that to me." Over the next few days, Jake set his plan into motion. He contacted Emily, feigning excitement about the investment and arranging a video call to discuss the details. He also reached out to Ryan, pretending to be an overseas investor interested in their project. The night of the video call, Jake sat in front of his computer, ready to put on the performance of a lifetime. Emily appeared on the screen, her face glowing with anticipation. "Hi, Jake. I'm so glad we could do this," Emily said, her voice warm. "Me too, Emily. I've got some great news. I've found an investor who's willing to put in a substantial amount of money. He is very interested in your project," Jake replied, keeping his tone upbeat. Emily's eyes widened. "That's amazing. Thank you, Jake." "Let us bring him into the call," Jake said, adding Ryan to the video chat. Ryan appeared on the screen, his expression smug. "Good evening, Jake. I've heard a lot about you." "Likewise, Ryan." "I've been looking forward to this," Jake replied, his smile never wavering. As they discussed the project, Jake subtly guided the conversation towards their plans for the money. He wanted them to reveal just how deep their betrayal ran. "So, Ryan, Emily mentioned that the funds would be used for a new development. Can you give me more details?" Jake asked, his tone curious. Ryan launched into a detailed explanation, outlining their plans and how the investment would be used. Emily chimed in occasionally, her excitement palpable. Jake listened carefully, noting every word. When they finished, he leaned back, a satisfied look on his face. "This sounds like a fantastic opportunity," Jake said. "I'm ready to move forward with the investment. But first, I need to share something with both of you." Emily and Ryan exchanged confused glances. "What is it, Jake?" Emily asked. Jake took a deep breath, his expression turning serious. "I know about your affair, Emily, and I know about your plans to steal my money." The color drained from Emily's face. "What are you talking about?" "I've been watching you, both of you," Jake continued, his voice cold. "I have emails, recordings, and photographs that prove everything. You thought you could betray me and get away with it, but you were wrong." Ryan's face twisted with anger. "You were bluffing." Jake shook his head, holding up the folder of evidence. "I am not. This is your last chance to come clean. Otherwise, I'll make sure you both face the consequences." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Jake, please, I am sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." Jake's expression remained steely. "It's too late for apologies, Emily. You made your choices, and now you'll have to live with them." He ended the call, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The first phase of his plan was complete, but there was still more to do. He knew that exposing Emily and Ryan publicly would be the final nail in their coffin, and he was ready to see it through to the end. Jake Thompson, now living under the alias Tyler Connors, felt a sense of urgency as he prepared for the next phase of his plan. He had successfully confronted Emily and Ryan during the video call, but he knew that more needed to be done to fully expose their betrayal and secure his revenge. Jake spent the next few days gathering the remaining pieces of evidence. He worked closely with Tom Harrison, ensuring that every email, phone call, and meeting was documented and ready for the final reveal. The more he uncovered, the more determined he became to see Emily and Ryan face the consequences of their actions. One evening, as Jake reviewed the latest batch of surveillance footage, he noticed a particularly damning conversation between Emily and Ryan. They were discussing the final steps of their scheme, confident that they had outsmarted Jake. "Jake has no idea what Ace's coming," Ryan said, a smug smile on his face. "By the time he realizes what S happened, we'll be long gone with his money." Emily laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "He is so clueless. I almost feel sorry for him." Jake's jaw tightened as he watched the footage. The time for subtlety was over. He needed to act swiftly and decisively. The next morning, Jake called Tom. "Tom, we're moving forward. I need you to deliver the evidence to the right people. Make sure it gets into the hands of the authorities and the media. It's time to blow this wide open." Tom's voice was steady. "Consider it done, Jake. I'll make sure everything is handled discreetly." With Tom taking care of the logistics, Jake focused on his personal preparations. He transferred the last of his assets into his new identity, ensuring that he was financially secure. He also made arrangements for his final departure from Denver, knowing that once the truth came out, he couldn't risk staying. A week later, the evidence was ready to be unveiled. Tom had coordinated with local law enforcement and several major news outlets, ensuring that the story would be impossible to ignore. The stage was set for Emily and Ryan's public downfall. Jake decided to watch the events unfold from a safe distance. He rented a room in a hotel on the outskirts of the city, setting up his laptop to monitor the news coverage and police activity. He felt a mix of anticipation and satisfaction as he waited for the fallout. That evening, the news broke. Local news stations ran the story of a massive financial fraud involving prominent banker Emily Davis and real estate developer Ryan Carter. The evidence Jake and Tom had gathered was laid out in meticulous detail, leaving no room for doubt. The media coverage was relentless. Reporters camped outside Emily and Ryan's homes, eager for a statement. Social media exploded with reactions, and the scandal quickly became the talk of the town. Jake watched as the police arrived at Emily's house, arresting her in front of a crowd of journalists and onlookers. Her face was a mix of shock and fear, a far cry from the confident woman who had believed she could deceive him. Ryan was arrested at his office, his smug demeanor replaced by one of panic and desperation. As Jake watched the live feed, he felt a sense of closure. Emily and Ryan were finally facing the consequences of their actions, and their carefully constructed lives were unraveling before their eyes. However, Jake knew that this was only part of the resolution. He needed to ensure that he could move on with his life without looking back. The next step was to leave Denver for good and start anew as Tyler Connors. Early the next morning, Jake packed his belongings and checked out of the hotel. He drove to the airport, his heart heavy but resolute. As he boarded the plane, he couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led him to this moment. His life with Emily had started with such promise, but it had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. Now, he was embarking on a new journey, free from the deceit and lies that had tainted his past. As the plane took off, Jake felt a sense of liberation. He was leaving behind the pain and the anger, ready to embrace a new future. He didn't know what awaited him, but he was determined to face it with the same resilience and strength that had carried him through the darkest times. Jake landed in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he had purchased a beautiful Adobe-style home with a pool and mountain views. It was a fresh start in a place where no one knew him as Jake Thompson. Here, he could truly become Tyler Connors and build a new life on his own terms. He spent the next few weeks settling into his new home, setting up his security systems and exploring the area. The tranquility of the desert landscape provided a stark contrast to the turmoil he had left behind, and Jake found solace in the simplicity of his new surroundings. One evening, as he sat on his patio watching the sunset, Jake received a call from Tom. "Jake, I just wanted to let you know that everything went as planned. Emily and Ryan are facing serious charges, and their reputations are in ruins. The authorities have all the evidence they need to make sure they are held accountable." Jake took a deep breath, feeling a sense of finality. "Thank you, Tom. I couldn't have done this without you." Tom's voice was reassuring. "You did what you had to do, Jake. Now it is time to move forward and focus on your new life." As Jake ended the call, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The chapter of his life that had been defined by betrayal and revenge was finally over. It was time to embrace the possibilities of his new identity and start anew. Over the next few months, Jake, now fully embracing his identity as Tyler Connors, built a new routine. He made new friends, explored new hobbies, and even started dating again. The wounds from his past began to heal, and he found himself looking forward to the future with hope and optimism. Despite the pain and the betrayal, Jake had come out stronger. He had learned to trust his instincts, to fight for what was right, and to never underestimate the importance of integrity and loyalty. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had faced his past, sought justice, and emerged victorious. Now he was ready to live his life to the fullest, free from the shadows of his former self. And so, Jake Thompson, now Tyler Connors, moved forward with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Jake Thompson, now fully established as Tyler Connors, felt a sense of purpose as he moved forward with the final stages of his plan. Emily and Ryan were facing the consequences of their actions, but Jake knew that true justice required one final act. Living in Scottsdale, Arizona, Jake maintained his low profile while keeping tabs on the developments in Denver. The media frenzy surrounding Emily and Ryan S. arrests had not died down, and the public eagerly awaited the trial. Jake knew that the courtroom proceedings would provide the final nail in the coffin for the duo who had betrayed him. Jake decided to travel back to Denver discreetly to ensure everything was in place for the trial. He knew he needed to stay under the radar, so he booked a flight under his new identity and arrived late at night. He checked into a small hotel on the outskirts of the city, avoiding any attention. The next morning, Jake met with Tom Harrison in a quiet cafe, their usual spot for clandestine meetings. Tom looked up as Jake entered, a look of determination on his face. "Jake, everything is ready, the evidence is solid, and the prosecution is confident." "Emily and Ryan Don T stand a chance," Tom said, sliding a thick folder across the table. Jake nodded, his resolve unwavering. "Thank you, Tom. I appreciate everything you've done. This trial will ensure they can hurt anyone else." Tom leaned back, his expression serious. "What's your plan for the trial? Are you going to attend?" Jake shook his head. "No. I'll be watching from a distance. I don't want to risk being seen, but I need you to keep me updated on everything that happens." Tom agreed, understanding Jake's need for caution. They discussed the details of the trial, ensuring that every angle was covered. As Jake prepared to leave, Tom placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have come a long way, Jake. You're almost at the finish line. Just stay strong." Jake smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I will, Tom. Thanks for everything." Over the next few days, Jake followed the trial closely. The courtroom was filled with reporters, legal experts, and curious onlookers. The prosecution presented a compelling case, backed by the extensive evidence Jake and Tom had gathered. Emily and Ryan's defense team struggled to counter the mountain of incriminating evidence. Emails detailing their fraudulent activities, recordings of their conversations, and financial records painted a damning picture. The courtroom buzzed with the drama of the unfolding case, and the public eagerly awaited the verdict. Jake watched the proceedings from the safety of his hotel room, his emotions a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. He knew that exposing Emily and Ryan was necessary, but it still hurt to see the woman he had once loved in such a dire situation. On the final day of the trial, the jury returned with a verdict guilty on all counts. Emily and Ryan were sentenced to significant prison time, their lives forever changed. The courtroom erupted in a flurry of reactions, but Jake felt a profound sense of closure. He called Tom to thank him once more. "It's over, Tom. They're going to prison. I can finally move on." Tom's voice was warm with encouragement. "You did the right thing, Jake. Now it's time to focus on your future." Jake returned to Scottsdale, feeling a weight lifted from his shoulders. He was ready to fully embrace his new life and put the past behind him. He settled back into his routine, enjoying the peace and tranquility of his desert home. One evening, as Jake was sitting on his patio, he received a call from an unfamiliar number. He hesitated before answering, a sense of unease creeping in. "Hello?" Jake said, his voice cautious. "Hello, Jake," the voice on the other end said, familiar yet unexpected. "It's Emily." Jake's heart raced. "Emily? How did you get this number?" Emily's voice was filled with desperation. "I had to find you. I need to talk to you. Please, just hear me out." Jake took a deep breath, conflicted. "Why should I? After everything you did?" "Jake, I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I made terrible choices, and now I'm paying the price. But there's something you need to know. It's about Ryan," Emily said, her voice trembling. Jake's curiosity got the better of him. "What is it, Emily?" "Ryan was planning something even bigger. He had connections, dangerous ones. I didn't realize how deep it went until it was too late. He was using me, Jake. Just like he used you," Emily confessed, her voice breaking. Jake felt a mix of anger and pity. "Why are you telling me this now? Because you're the only one who can stop him. He still has people on the outside, and they are dangerous." "I'm scared, Jake. I don't know who else to turn to," Emily admitted. Jake sighed, torn between his desire for revenge and his innate sense of justice. "I'll look into it, Emily, but this doesn't change what you did." "I understand," Emily said quietly. "Thank you, Jake. Be careful." Jake hung up, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't ignore Emily's warning. Despite everything, he felt a responsibility to ensure that Ryan's reach didn't extend beyond prison walls. The next day, Jake reached out to Tom, explaining the situation. "Tom, I need your help again. Emily warned me about Ryan's connections. We need to dig deeper and find out what he is involved in." Tom's voice was firm. "I'll get on it, Jake. We'll find out the truth." Over the following weeks, Jake and Tom uncovered a web of criminal activities linked to Ryan. His connections spanned various illegal enterprises, and his influence extended far beyond what they had initially thought. Jake knew he had to act quickly to neutralize the threat. He coordinated with law enforcement, providing them with the information they needed to dismantle Ryan's network. The operation was risky, but Jake was determined to see it through. The culmination of their efforts came in a series of raids, resulting in multiple arrests and the dismantling of Ryan's criminal organization. Jake felt a sense of relief, knowing that the danger had been contained. As Jake settled back into his life in Scottsdale, he felt a renewed sense of peace. The ordeal had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, but he had emerged stronger and more resilient. He continued to build his new life, forming connections with his neighbors, exploring new interests, and even considering starting his own business again. The shadows of his past no longer haunted him, and he looked forward to the future with hope. One evening, as Jake watched the sun set over the mountains, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had faced betrayal, sought justice, and ultimately found a way to move forward. Jake Thompson, now Tyler Connors, had finally found the stability and peace he had longed for. And as he embraced his new life, he knew that he was ready for whatever the future held. The courtroom was quiet, save for the murmurs of the spectators eagerly awaiting the verdict. Emily Davis sat at the defendant's table, her once confident demeanor replaced by a look of desperation and fear. Her lawyer, a seasoned defense attorney, had done his best to create doubt, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The judge entered the room, and the murmurs ceased. Everyone rose and then sat back down, tension thick in the air. The jury filed in, their expressions giving nothing away. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for the foreman to speak. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Emily Davis, guilty on all counts," the foreman announced. Emily's world crumbled around her. She barely heard the judge's words as he sentenced her to a lengthy prison term. Her life, once filled with ambition and success, was now reduced to this moment of disgrace and ruin. She glanced at Ryan Carter, who sat beside her, his face a mask of defeat. They had believed they could outsmart everyone, but their schemes had led them to this. As Emily was led away in handcuffs, the reality of her situation sank in. Her mind raced with thoughts of regret and despair. She had betrayed Jake, the man who had once loved her deeply, and now she was paying the ultimate price. She wondered if there was any way to redeem herself, but the path ahead seemed bleak. Months passed as Emily adapted to life in prison. Each day was a stark reminder of her fall from grace. She kept to herself, avoiding conflicts and trying to find a semblance of peace. But the guilt and shame were always there, haunting her every moment. One day, as Emily sat alone in the prison yard, she noticed a familiar face approaching. It was her lawyer, carrying a stack of papers and a somber expression. "Emily, I have some news," he said, sitting down beside her. "Ryan has decided to cooperate with the authorities. He has provided them with information about other criminal activities, hoping to reduce his sentence." Emily felt a mix of anger and relief. "So, he is throwing me under the bus to save himself?" The lawyer nodded. "In a way, yes. But his cooperation has also revealed new details that could potentially help you. If you are willing to testify against others involved in the schemes, it might improve your situation." Emily considered the offer. She had little left to lose and saw this as a chance to make amends, even if it was only a small step. What do I need to do? Over the next few weeks, Emily worked with the authorities, providing testimony and evidence that implicated several high-profile individuals involved in Ryan's network. It was a dangerous move, but Emily was determined to do whatever it took to regain some semblance of integrity. Meanwhile, Jake Thompson, living as Tyler Connors, continued to build his new life in Scottsdale. He had successfully dismantled Ryan's criminal network and ensured that those involved faced justice. The threat that once loomed over him had been eradicated, and he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Jake stayed informed about the developments in Emily's case through Tom Harrison. He learned of her decision to cooperate and provide valuable information. While it didn't erase her betrayal, it showed a glimmer of the person she used to be, a person who once had potential and dreams. One evening, as Jake was enjoying a quiet dinner at a local restaurant, his phone rang. It was Tom. "Jake, I thought you'd want to know. Emily's cooperation has led to several more arrests. She's made a significant impact, and the authorities are considering reducing her sentence," Tom said. Jake took a deep breath, processing the news. "Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the update." After the call, Jake sat in silence, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. Emily's actions had set off a chain of events that changed both of their lives forever. He had found a way to move forward, but he couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow for what could have been. Several months later, Jake received a letter. It was from Emily, sent from prison. He hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. Finally, curiosity got the better of him, and he began to read. "Dear Jake, I know I am the last person you want to hear from, but I felt compelled to write this letter. I owe you an apology, many apologies in fact. I betrayed your trust and caused you unimaginable pain. There's no excuse for what I did, and I will carry that guilt with me for the rest of my life. I've been cooperating with the authorities, trying to make amends in whatever way I can. It's not enough, but it's a start. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you can find some peace knowing that I'm trying to do the right thing now. I wish things had been different. I wish I had been a better person. I am truly sorry, Jake." Sincerely, Emily. Jake read the letter several times, his emotions a mix of sadness and closure. He appreciated her attempt to make amends even if it came too late. He decided to keep the letter as a reminder of the lessons he had learned and the strength he had found in moving forward. As time passed, Jake continued to build his new life. He opened a new business focusing on cybersecurity and consulting, which quickly gained traction. His reputation as a reliable and skilled professional grew, and he found fulfillment in his work. Jake also formed new relationships, gradually allowing himself to trust and connect with others again. He discovered a sense of community in Scottsdale, finding joy in simple moments and new experiences. One evening, as Jake watched the sunset over the mountains, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. His journey had been filled with challenges and heartbreak, but it had also led him to a place of peace and possibility. He had faced betrayal, sought justice, and ultimately found a way to rebuild his life. And as he looked toward the future, Jake knew that he was ready for whatever came next, with the strength and resilience that had carried him through the darkest times. Emily's downfall had been a painful chapter, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and transformation. Jake had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live a life of integrity and purpose. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jake raised a glass to the journey ahead, embracing the promise of new beginnings and the hope of a brighter tomorrow. Jake Thompson, now firmly established as Tyler Connors, had found a semblance of peace in his new life in Scottsdale, Arizona. His business in cybersecurity and consulting was thriving, and he had built a supportive community around him. Yet the past still lingered in his mind, especially after receiving Emily's heartfelt letter. One afternoon, as Jake was working in his home office, his phone rang. It was Tom Harrison. "Jake, there is something you need to know," Tom said, his voice serious. "I've uncovered new information about Ryan's connections. It seems there were deeper layers to his criminal activities that we didn't fully expose." Jake felt a familiar tension in his chest. "What do you mean, Tom? There are still some players out there who weren't caught in the initial sweep. They've been keeping a low profile, but I've been tracking their movements. I think they might be planning something," Tom explained. Jake took a deep breath, his mind racing. "What kind of plan are we talking about?" "I'm not entirely sure yet, but it involves significant financial transactions and possibly some high-profile targets. I need more time to gather concrete evidence," Tom replied. Jake knew he couldn't ignore this. "All right, Tom, keep digging. Let me know as soon as you have more information." The next few days were a blur of activity as Jake and Tom worked tirelessly to uncover the details of the new threat. Jake's cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable as he helped trace digital footprints and secure vital information. One evening, as Jake was sifting through data, he received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang, and he opened the door to find a young woman standing there looking nervous. "Can I help you?" Jake asked, his guard up. The woman hesitated before speaking. "Mr. Connors? My name is Sarah. I used to work for Ryan Carter. I think I have information that might be useful to you." Jake ushered her inside, offering her a seat and a glass of water. "What kind of information?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Ryan had a lot of powerful connections, and I overheard conversations about plans that were in motion even before he was arrested. These people are dangerous, and they're still out there." Jake listened intently as Sarah detailed what she knew. Her information corroborated what Tom had discovered, adding new layers to the web of criminal activities. "Why are you coming to me with this?" Jake asked, curious about her motives. Sarah looked down, her voice trembling. "I want to do the right thing. I didn't realize how deep I was involved until it was too late. I was scared, but I can't stay silent anymore. I know you've been fighting against Ryan's network, and I thought you could help." Jake nodded, appreciating her bravery. "Thank you for coming forward, Sarah. This information is crucial. I'll make sure it gets to the right people." Over the next few days, Jake and Tom worked closely with law enforcement to coordinate a series of raids based on the new information. The operation was complex and risky, but they were determined to dismantle the remnants of Ryan's network. The day of the raids arrived, and Jake monitored the events from his home, his nerves on edge. He knew that this was the final step in ensuring that Ryan's influence was completely eradicated. As the raids unfolded, reports began to come in. Several high-profile arrests were made, and significant amounts of money and illegal assets were seized. The operation was a success, and the threat that had loomed over Jake's new life was finally neutralized. Tom called Jake later that evening, his voice filled with relief. "We did it, Jake. They are all in custody. The authorities have everything they need to prosecute them fully." Jake felt a wave of gratitude and closure. "Thank you, Tom. I couldn't have done this without you." Tom's tone was warm. "You did most of the heavy lifting, Jake. I'm just glad we could see this through." With the danger behind him, Jake focused on moving forward. He continued to grow his business, forging new partnerships and expanding his reach. His reputation as a skilled and trustworthy professional attracted clients from all over, and he found fulfillment in helping others secure their digital lives. Jake also allowed himself to open up more, forming deeper connections with those around him. He started dating again, cautious but hopeful, and found joy in building new relationships. One evening, as Jake was attending a community event, he met a woman named Claire. She was smart, kind, and shared many of his interests. They hit it off immediately, and Jake felt a spark of hope for the future. As they spent more time together, Jake shared parts of his past with Claire, including his experiences with Emily and Ryan. Claire listened with understanding and compassion, never judging him for the choices he had made. "I admire your strength, Jake," Claire said one evening as they walked along a scenic trail. "You've been through so much, but you've come out stronger. I'm glad I met you." Jake smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. "Thank you, Claire. I'm glad I met you too." Their relationship blossomed, and Jake found himself looking forward to each new day with renewed optimism. He had faced the darkness of betrayal and emerged into the light of a new beginning. As Jake and Claire stood together, watching the sun set over the mountains, he felt a deep sense of peace. He had finally found the stability and happiness he had longed for, and he was ready to embrace the future with an open heart. The revelation of Ryan's deeper connections had been a final test of Jake's resolve, but he had faced it head-on and emerged victorious. With Claire by his side and a bright future ahead, Jake knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but it had led him to a place of fulfillment and joy. And as he looked toward the horizon, Jake felt a profound sense of gratitude for the path that had brought him here. Jake Thompson, living as Tyler Connors, had found a new rhythm in his life. His business was thriving, and his relationship with Claire had brought him a sense of peace and happiness he hadn't known in years. Yet the events of the past continued to shape his present, and he knew he had one final act to complete. The dismantling of Ryan Carter's network had been a major victory, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that there were still loose ends. He stayed vigilant, working with Tom Harrison to monitor any residual threats. They kept a close watch on those who had been arrested, ensuring that no new plots were being hatched from within prison walls. One evening, as Jake and Claire were enjoying dinner at a cozy restaurant, Jake's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Tom. "Jake, we need to talk. It's important." Jake excused himself and stepped outside to call Tom. "What is going on?" Tom's voice was tense. "I have intercepted some communication from within the prison. It seems there are a few individuals who are still loyal to Ryan, and they are planning something. We need to act fast." Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. "What's the plan? We need to gather more information and ensure that the authorities are ready to intervene. This could be our last chance to put an end to this once and for all," Tom replied. Jake returned to the table, his mind racing. He looked at Claire, who immediately sensed something was wrong. "Is everything okay?" Jake took her hand, his eyes serious. "There's something I need to take care of. It's about the case I've been working on. It's not over yet." Claire squeezed his hand, her expression filled with concern and support. "Do what you need to do, Jake. Just be careful." Jake spent the next few days working closely with Tom, analyzing the intercepted communications and piecing together the plan. They discovered that Ryan's loyalists were attempting to smuggle contraband into the prison and orchestrate a breakout. It was a bold and dangerous move, and they needed to act quickly to stop it. With the evidence in hand, Jake and Tom coordinated with law enforcement to stage a series of raids. The operation was meticulously planned, ensuring that every aspect was covered. They knew that any misstep could have dire consequences. On the night of the raids, Jake found himself once again monitoring the events from a secure location. His heart pounded as he watched the live feed, hoping that everything would go according to plan. The raids were swift and decisive. The authorities moved in, apprehending the key players and seizing the contraband. The breakout plot was foiled, and the remaining members of Ryan's network were finally brought to justice. Tom called Jake shortly after the operation concluded. "We did it, Jake. It's over. They are all in custody, and there's no way they can continue their operations from prison." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Tom. I can tell you how much this means to me." Tom's voice was warm with camaraderie. "You did it, Jake. You saw this through to the end. Now it's time to move on and live your life." Jake hung up, feeling a sense of finality. The shadow that had hung over him for so long was finally gone. He returned home, where Claire was waiting for him with a worried expression. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Jake smiled, pulling her into an embrace. "Yes, everything is finally all right. It's over. We can move on." The weeks that followed were filled with a sense of renewal. Jake focused on his business, continuing to build his reputation and expand his reach. He and Claire grew closer, their relationship deepening with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, Jake and Claire decided to take a hike in the nearby mountains. The trail was serene, offering stunning views of the desert landscape. As they reached a scenic overlook, Jake took Claire's hand and looked into her eyes. "Claire, I've been through a lot, and I have learned that life is too short to take anything for granted. You've been my rock, my support, and I can imagine my life without you," Jake said, his voice filled with emotion. Claire's eyes sparkled with tears. "Jake, you mean the world to me. I am so glad we found each other." Jake smiled, feeling a surge of happiness. "Claire, will you marry me?" Claire's face lit up with joy. "Yes, Jake. Yes, I will." They embraced, the mountains bearing witness to their love and commitment. For the first time in years, Jake felt truly at peace, ready to build a future filled with hope and happiness. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, surrounded by close friends and the new family they had built together. The ceremony was simple yet beautiful, a testament to their love and the journey that had brought them together. As Jake and Claire exchanged vows, Jake felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path that had led him here had been filled with pain and betrayal, but it had also brought him strength, resilience, and ultimately, a new beginning. In the years that followed, Jake and Claire built a life filled with love, laughter, and purpose. Jake's business continued to thrive, and he became a mentor to others, sharing his experiences and helping them navigate their own challenges. Jake never forgot the lessons he had learned. He remained vigilant, always aware of the importance of integrity and trust. He and Claire faced their future with open hearts, ready to embrace whatever came their way. As they watched the sun set over their home one evening, Jake felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had found the stability and peace he had longed for, and he knew that together they could face any challenge. Jake Thompson, now Tyler Connors, had finally come full circle. He had overcome betrayal, sought justice, and found a new beginning. And as he held Claire's hand, he knew that the journey had been worth every moment. They had found their place in the world, and together they would continue to build a life filled with love and possibility. Thank you for listening to this story. Subscribe to my channel, put a like under the video, and write a comment about how you like this story and what stories you want to hear.